All right. Today we're going to talk about um, a possible tax issue that I thought about um, last night. I don't know why I thought about it last night because I was just thinking about it. So this is my house. We bought this house for 241,000 bucks. Probably about, let's see, my oldest son is like almost 30, so 29, and he was like two or three. So we bought this house like 25, 26 years ago. When we bought it at 241,000, it didn't have, obviously it didn't look like this, didn't have the siding, the porch wasn't this nice. We didn't have the garage doors, we didn't have this section here to the left. That this is actually two bedrooms. Everything inside was old, the roof was old. There's a deck on the back that we put up that wasn't there. So there was just basically a lot of work we did on it. So it appraises now at like 750. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with the widow's tax trap, and all the widow's tax trap is all about means that if your spouse dies, you go from married to single, so your standard deduction goes way down. So all of a sudden, um, all the RMDs and all that stuff may put you in a tax zone, a tax bracket that you don't want to be in, that you're paying a bunch of taxes on. So it hit me last night that it could be the same thing with my house. So I thought, like, let's just say, for example, something happens to me tomorrow and Beth says, "Hey, I want to downsize." So right now, I think the standard deduction, which we'll look at specifically here in a minute, is 500,000. So even though I only put 241,000 into the house was 241. Even though I've done all these improvements, it gives me 500,000 grace that I won't be taxed on. So that would put me at 741,000 or whatever, that wouldn't even think about it if we're married filing jointly and we would sell the house. But I started thinking, what would happen if if one of us died and we wanted to move and we wanted to sell the house? Now all of a sudden we've hit the widow's tax trap, because the deduction for the house when you're single is different for the deduction when you're married. So when you're married, I think it's 500. When you're single, it's only 90,000. So all of a sudden, you get whacked on all this, capital, this appreciation of your house. Now, yes, you could say, hey, you should keep receipts. And, I mean, we knew this was our forever home. So did we keep receipts? No. Could I get receipts, and are they legitimate? Like this was $50,000 here, the two bedrooms that we added. We knocked down a wall. There used to be right here where this window is, there was a bedroom downstairs. And so we knocked that down and made it part of the family room. So that made it all a family room. And then we redid our kitchen and our family room. We just did a fair amount of work on the house. And I pretty much, a good friend of mine does most of the work. So I could go in and have him generate the receipts for what we paid at the time. But let's just say that wasn't realistic. So when you're married, it's not a big deal. So I asked Grok, I said, hey, what would happen if my spouse died, or is there um, a tax issue? And I actually learned something new. Maybe you'll learn something new too. So you said, do I have a tax bomb at my house? I paid 241,000 in New Jersey, and now it's worth about 750. So it says, no, you don't have a tax bomb up to $500,000 worth of improvements. And I could easily, come up with the receipts for that stuff. So it said no, but then it said, hey, what happens if I'm single? And that's what I asked it. So it looks like your max exclusion for singles 250,000, married jointly is 50,000. So now all of a sudden I have a $259,000 tax bill that when I sell it and I get the proceeds from the house, you got to pay, which could really be a problem, right? So so what I did is I was like, wow, that's a tax bomb. So then my thinking behind that was, all right, well then probably the easiest way for me to avoid this tax bomb, which is probably it's in my plan anyhow, is if I buy another house. So let's say my house is 741. Then I move to my lake house. So I get the $500,000 capital gains break or whatever it is, and then I get the receipts for the difference. And then I buy my lake house for say 800,000, then I'm good to go. Because when I eventually sell that lake house in 5, 10 years or whatever, I doubt the appreciation is going to be all that much because I'm not going to put a lot of money in it. So I'll have some normal appreciation. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. So that was my first thought. But then, we have good friends here, and that was on my video of the lake house. So I don't know. I don't really plan on moving yet. And so what would happen? So what I ended up finding out is that, and it could be different from state to state, but I think this is the federal rule. So the federal rule right now, at least according to Grok, which seems pretty legit, is the it's called a 2 to 5 rule, 2 to 5 year rule. So as long as the both of you have been in the house for at least the last 2 to 5 years. So of the two of the last 5 years, you were married filing jointly. That then, even though your spouse dies, you can you can still claim up to 500,000 if it was, as long as it was within the 2 to 5 year, if as long as the last two of the 5 years you were married filing jointly. So that was a fairly big relief, right? Because then that means that even though your spouse dies, because one of the primary things that I think they say about retirement and or major events is don't do anything. So when your spouse dies, don't do anything radical, don't do anything fast until you've had time to kind of ingest the whole thing and let your life settle down. So, what this would give you like 2 years essentially. Actually, it would give you of the last five, it actually gives you 5 years as long as it was 2 years. It gives you 2 years that you were with your spouse, so the clock would start at 2 years. So it really gives you 3 years to make that decision. Because then in 3 years you would have been married filing jointly the two. So that would have been a total of 5 years. So I just thought it was really interesting. I've covered. I did a video on the widow's tax trap and did some numbers on it. I'll just reiterate again that using AI is just awesome. I went out a couple nights ago and just started. You can see, I think it's on the left here. Yeah, yeah. So it keeps your conversation. Now go to a um I may eventually go to a paid subscription. I don't know. I have a feeling I'm going to. And it keeps your things, it keeps your history of your conversation. And I think there's a limit when you don't pay how much it keeps. But what what I did is I went out and said, hey, can you run my plan during the worst 30-year period and tell me how I would do? Um, so I mean, there's like all sorts of things you can do that you just ask it and boom. I mean, you could still got to watch it. You got to look at the numbers. Like I always tell it to reprint or show me my withdrawal schedule again with all the columns, just as a sanity check. And then if you're doing something funny, like if it's taxes, like I'll probably do a widow's tax trap in here and I'll have it show me the tax column so that I can make sure it's doing everything correctly, or at least it looks, sanity check wise, it looks good. So I'm telling you, AI is just awesome, and I think I'm just going to use it more and more. And the reason it's kind of cool is because of this. If it didn't have this conversation retention, it would be a pain, right? Because you'd have to put it in every time. But you can always go back into a conversation and just pick it up. So you can see I've got my conservative retirement withdrawal plan. And so I can go back to that anytime and just take a look at it. So it was funny. My daughter, she does Dungeons and Dragons. So I was just curious. I went in here and said, hey, Grok, can you do a Dungeons and Dragons campaign? And it was kind of fun. It could do it. I did this game called Traveler when I was like, I don't know, 16 or 15. I don't know. So just some thoughts on your house. That you really just, once your spouse dies, you have that 3 year time window. Now, if you kept all your receipts, like I said, I had the same person do most of my work as a contractor because he's my friend, so I could go in and get those receipts. But if you didn't have your receipts, or you just, maybe your house just took off even though you didn't do any work on it, you do have that window, that 2 to 5 year window. And obviously you would have to, maybe talk to your accountant or do your own homework. But I thought that was interesting and I thought it was worth a video. So take care. Remember, I am not a tax planner. I'm just looking through, but it made me feel pretty good. So, but you got to do all your homework yourself. Take care.